if you could go back and give yourself some advice, either about revision or just more general GCSE preparation, what would it be? So, Jaden, we'll come to you first, if that's okay.
Yeah. So I think one of the mistakes I did was I didn't really use the specifications that were given to us. So depending on what exam board you're doing and what subject you're doing, you can search up online, for example, AQA maths or something, and you can find the exact specification which the exam board puts out. And this specification tells you every single thing that you should or need to learn about. And I'd recommend either printing it out, it is quite long, or just downloading it. And then you can highlight what you do know and highlight what you need to work on. And from this, it's a very clear way of figuring out what you should focus on next. So you can see what you've missed, because everything that they put on the specification can be tested. So you really want to know as much of it as you can. And this is one thing that I missed out on, which I wish I could have done.
That's a really good shout. I think that's it. That is a hugely overlooked resource, by lots of people. I think I think a lot of people who have been in your position and are where you are now would agree with that. That A is really valuable, but B isn't something everybody does. So definitely go and seek out your exam board's specification and advice on how to pinpoint your revision. Bethan, how are you? So, what would you go and tell you a few years ago who's approaching the GCSEs?
Well, I definitely agree with looking at the specification. It's actually something I still do now in university, just to let me know, like as a self-reflection, what am I struggling with? What am I doing really well at? I also think I wish I'd maybe talk to my teachers more about, what I'm finding difficult, what I did, as a revision technique, because your teachers are there to help you. That's their job. They're there to teach you. So, really utilize them. And if you have questions that you need answering, you go and ask your teachers after class, and don't sort of struggle in silence if you're finding something difficult. Do go and ask your teachers, because I'm sure the teachers here will agree, they'd much rather students come to them and say, actually, oh, I'm really sorry, I didn't understand that lesson. Could you maybe signpost me to some resources that I can go over, or explain it to me again? Then you just go home and you're confused. I'm sure they'd much rather that. But yeah, I wish I'd sort of done that a bit more.
Yeah, I think again that's another really underutilized resource, isn't it? The people who are there to help you and are you actually coming into contact with daily, weekly, perhaps in the class. Go back and ask them about things you didn't understand, and they'll be certainly more than willing to help with that. I'm going to pose a question slightly different to Matthew and Jeremy. So thinking about, rather than you going back and giving yourself advice, what common mistakes do you see students making that you could perhaps give someone who's just starting their term to suggest they avoid doing, or they don't fall into the trap of? Have you got anything you could touch upon that side of the answer? Matthew first, if that's okay.
Yeah, there are two main things I think that in my experience students sometimes do. One is they try and revise everything, but almost like they don't really plan it out, so they just sort of try and binge revise, I guess, and they end up getting in a bit of a muddle, and therefore they get stressed, and it has this sort of snowball effect in terms of how it impacts on them. And another thing I think students do is they try to second guess a question, so they almost try and sort of memorize a sample answer they might have written, or try and work out what question came up last year and what might come up this year. And sometimes that can be really useful, but I think if you're too narrow with your idea in terms of what a question or an exam paper might look like, it can actually then backfire a little bit later on. So just keep options open and just be prepared for lots of things. And I think it all comes back to planning ahead really, and being organized and not leaving things to the last minute.
And that's kind of in agreement with what we heard from Jaden as well, that if you want to plan and know where to focus, your exam boards kind of spec and advice is a great place to start, as well as information from your teachers, and what they're telling you is a good way to kind of know where to focus your revision and so on. So yeah, hopefully you guys online are listening, kind of making notes of that. Jeremy, do you have any kind of things you try and advise people avoid doing, or mistakes you see made by students?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the most important thing, or the most crucial thing, is not to just do the stuff that's easy, because lots of students, and if we talk within maths for a second, they might just do the things that they're getting right, because if you get things right, it feels good, and so you do a bit more of that, but you're not really consolidating anything that you don't already know. So it's actually to be a bit braver and to try some of the stuff that actually takes you out of your comfort zone. And that then even extrapolates across subjects. Lots of people focus on the subjects they're good at because they enjoy them, and they neglect the subjects that they're not good at. So you have to just get comfortable with getting things wrong. You have to get comfortable with being a bit rusty, and know that when you're revising, it's low stakes, and it's a great opportunity for you to bring up and build up your skills in the areas you're not so confident with.